So the purpose of today's call is to basically go through a number of questions that have come in from members and give people a chance on the phone or on the Zoom call to ask BEIS some questions. We've got representatives from a couple of areas at BEIS that are on this call. I'm not sure exactly who is all on, but if I can ask perhaps the representatives from BEIS if they can just identify themselves, and then we can get started with an overview of the building and heat strategy. So I think there should be 5 representatives of BEIS on the call. So if, I don't know who wants to start.
Hi, Kenneth. It's Susanna. Hopefully you can hear me.
Hi, Susanna.
Hello. So we have Laura, who is up first, who will talk about and give an overview of the heat and building strategy, and then we have a few other people on the call who will then take over from her. So we have Will as well, who will I think be stepping in with Laura, and we have a series of other people from Hug and LAD, and some other people from SHDF, and some people from ECO in that order. So I think we'll just run through quite naturally once each person stops.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Perfect. That works well. So I guess that means that Laura's up first.
Thank you very much. And apologies earlier, I was struggling to hear you, but it's much better now. So please do flag in the chat or speak up if you're having any issues with my audio. I've just started sharing some slides. Can someone confirm if they can see them?
Yes, we can see them.
Fantastic. So I'm going to attempt to give you a whistle-stop tour of the heat and building strategy, though I must admit it is a very long strategy, and therefore obviously we'll only be going through the high-level points with, as Susanna says, our colleagues speaking through some of the specific schemes and answering your questions later. So just setting the scene, within the strategy, we start by talking about where we are now, what's the context that we're in. And the headlines are that heat and buildings are responsible for almost 1/3 of national emissions, with the majority of that being from how we heat these buildings. And the heat and building strategy sets out how we're trying to reduce these emissions in the next decade, but also in the run-up to net zero. But as well as talking about emission reduction and the environmental impact, we also talk about the social impacts, including reducing fuel poverty and reducing bills to individuals, and broader economic impacts, for example, new green job opportunities and levelling up across the UK. However, it is a bit of a challenge, and we highlight that within the strategy, given that such a large proportion of buildings, in particular domestic homes, use gas central heating and other fossil fuels for heating. And in addition to that, we have quite low energy efficiency in some buildings, in particularly in homes. As well as that, we've got some other specific challenges to face, including seasonal heat demand. Heating's not so much of a problem in the summer in the UK, but in the winter, particularly now, it's quite chilly, and so people need to heat their homes without it costing a lot and without emitting a lot of greenhouse gases. Additionally, even though 2050 in some ways feels miles away, in other ways there's a lot to be done in the run-up. So that we want to make progress soon. So in order to deliver this ambition to decrease our emissions in the next 10 years, but also in the run up to net zero, we've set out 5 key principles, and these will particularly inform our approach in the near term. So as a brief overview, the first one is about taking a whole buildings and whole system approach. And when we talk about whole buildings, what we mean is building on our fabric first approach, that for some individuals and for some buildings, it might be appropriate not to just consider the fabric first, but to, in parallel, also consider the heat source, also consider how you want to measure and manage that, for example, through smart meters or home energy management systems, and therefore considering the needs of the building altogether, or a whole building. In addition to that, we talk about a whole systems approach, and by that we're talking about the broader energy system, both electricity system, gas system, of the whole of the UK, but also about how we decarbonise heating in parallel to decarbonisation of other sectors, because there are a lot of fuels and sources and storage needs and distribution needs which will impact a number of different sectors. So we want to work together to make sure that the whole system decarbonises in an efficient, effective way. The next principle is about innovation and research, that we want to continue to encourage and fund this activity, because it will help reduce costs, it will help improve technologies, and the learnings that we take away from innovation and research can inform later strategic decisions. For example, we are continuing to invest in hydrogen heating in buildings trials and pilots in order to inform strategic decisions by 2026. Our third principle is around, as well as undertaking all that further research to build our evidence base, there are some things that we know now and that we need to prioritize now. So we need to drive no and low regrets actions. And what that means is basically action that's going to be needed in any path to net zero. So for example, that means building the relevant markets that we will be reliant on in later years, for example, for heat pumps. Also about upskilling and reskilling the workforce to make sure that they're equipped with the skills that they need to deliver net zero, and about deploying their technologies that are going to be needed in any scenario. For example, these may be fabric efficiency, these may be smart and flexible technologies. Also, this is about future proofing, so making sure that the buildings that are constructed now are fit for the future, can mitigate but also adapt to climate change. And that takes us on to our fourth principle, which is about balance. It's about providing both certainty and stability for industry and individuals, whilst providing adaptability, flexibility, and tailoring our approach so it's not a one size fits all, because the UK has a very diverse building stock, and so we know that the same approach won't work for everyone in the same way. So we want to provide that certainty where we can and where we know what we're going to do, but we want to continue pooling that resource and that research to inform our approach and keep tweaking and tailoring our approach to make sure it's right for different people in different circumstances in the future. And the final principle is about targeting support. And when we talk about support, this is somewhat government funding, but this might also be information and advice. And what we really want to do is make sure that that is there for the people who need it most. And one of these key groups is the fuel poor. So we are continuing to fund schemes to make sure that they can afford to have warm homes and decarbonise as well. And obviously we might talk later a bit more about our home upgrade grant and some of the other fuel poverty schemes that we have in train. So in the heat and buildings strategy, we set out a lot of new announcements and compile the policy picture and portfolio across heat and buildings. But some of the key takeaways or key announcements that we note in this is our new boiler upgrade scheme, is our consultations on ending fossil fuels, use of fossil fuel for heating in homes and non-domestic buildings off the gas grid, our consultation on our market-based mechanism, our heat pump ready innovation programme, our aim to end installations of natural gas boilers, both new and replacement, by 2035 in line with natural replacement cycles for natural gas boilers, and growing the green finance market through a number of routes. And in the left column here, I've set out some of our broader aims that we set out in the strategy, including deploying energy efficiency, including fabric efficiency and energy related product efficiency, measures and appliances, growing markets for low carbon technologies, including heat pumps, heat networks, and potentially hydrogen, communicating strategic decisions by 2026, and continuing to boost funding to decarbonize buildings, for example, through the boiler upgrade scheme and home upgrade grant. So as I've stated, one of the things we're trying to do is improve energy efficiency. And as I've said, this is not just about fabric efficiency, but that is one really important step. So we have slightly different approaches depending on the building type. And on this slide, I have attempted to set out some of the key measures and aims across these different building types. So for example, for homes, we continue our commitment as set out in the Clean Growth Strategy to make sure that where cost effective, practicable and affordable, homes are able to meet Energy Performance Certificate Band C or exceed that by 2035. In addition to that, we have our fuel poverty targets for England, which set out we would like as many homes as possible, fuel poor homes as possible, to meet fuel poverty energy efficiency rating C by 2030. We are also supporting these minimum energy efficiency standards by continuing to consider and consult on phasing in performance standards across different tenure types. As I've mentioned previously, we also want to make sure buildings are fit for the future through our future home standard for homes, but also through our future building standard for non-domestic buildings. Additionally, we have further funding for the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund and the Home Upgrade Grant to support decarbonisation in homes, alongside private investment and green finance. And we're working to continue considering the role for mortgage lenders and other key stakeholders in delivering that. For commercial and industrial buildings, we've set out our energy performance target of EPC B by 2030 for the rented commercial buildings, and we are using a energy performance based framework for the largest buildings in that category to help improve in-use real-world energy performance. Additionally, we have other schemes, including the Energy Savings Opportunity Scheme and the, I'm going to forget the name of it now, Streamlined Energy Carbon Reporting Scheme. And as I've stated, future building standard, and continuing to consider how best to support smaller buildings and smaller businesses in the non-domestic sector. For public sector, we're continuing to invest in our public sector decarbonisation scheme alongside our public sector low carbon skills fund to support the delivery of that scheme. And we have set an aim to reduce emissions by 75% by 2037. So those schemes we hope will deliver that target. So in addition to improving energy performance, we also need to do something about the source of fuel that we use. because if we continue using fossil fuels, even if we use less of them, we're going to continue emitting greenhouse gases and not reach net zero. Therefore, on this slide, we've set out some of the activities that we are pursuing in order to phase out fossil fuels while building markets for low carbon alternatives. As I've mentioned previously, we're consulting on phasing out fossil fuels in off-gas grid homes, and we are also aiming to end installation of natural gas boilers by 2035 in line with estimated lifetimes of natural gas boiler products, to make sure there are little or no in operation, or none in operation in 2050. So, for example, for growing the heat pump, encouraging innovation to drive down costs, for example, through our heat pump innovation program, whilst consulting on how best to work with the market to drive decarbonisation through a market-based mechanism, alongside government funding, especially in the near term through the boiler upgrade scheme and the home upgrade grant. For heat networks, which includes a lot of individual programs under that, for example, the Green Heat Networks Fund, to build those markets and make sure that the heat networks that are in use or being constructed are using low carbon heat sources and are really efficient. For hydrogen, for now, the plan is mostly around continuing to build our evidence base through pilots and research, and we are planning to consult on our approach to hydrogen ready boilers. And this should all inform strategic decisions by 2026 on the role of hydrogen for heating buildings. In addition to these technologies, we know that there will be a smaller role for other building heat networks or hydrogen are not suitable. And this may involve biomass, bioenergy. It may involve other technologies such as solar thermal or bioenergy, including decarbonisation of the gas grid, and also continuing to explore gasification and potential biomethane support in the future. And I think that brings me to the end of the presentation. I appreciate that's been a whistle-stop tour. Hopefully that's a useful recap of the heat and building strategy. And I'm...
Thank you very much, Laura. That, I think, was very useful and a good overview for everyone. What we'll do is we'll hold off questions until after everyone's spoken, and then we'll come back and ask, I think we've got a couple of questions that you might be able to answer. So up next, we're moving on to the, I'm not sure who's speaking next. I think it might be Will, is it, Suzanne? Oh, we have complete silence. Hello, is anyone hearing me?
I can hear you, Ken.
Yeah.
I can hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, I think is
Hi,
Will Humphrey.
hi, Kenneth. Yeah, sorry, it's it's Will Humphreys here from BEIS. So it's the next item due to cover the boiler upgrade scheme.
Okay.
I think I noticed. So I'm not sure if I noticed Rebecca Vance is on the call. So unless she might want to talk to this point.
I can. I'm having absolutely terrible network issues. So I don't know if anyone can hear me or. Okay, great.
We can hear you. Yep.
I did have some a couple of slides which I was going to share, but I'm not going to because I've no doubt that will make the whole thing come crashing down. But I'm happy to ping them on afterwards. There was nothing too revolutionary in them, and nothing that I can't cover just by walking you through what I was going to say. So, my name is Rebecca Vance. I'm the Deputy Director responsible for the boiler upgrade scheme, among a few other things. So, just to give you a brief overview. The boiler upgrade scheme is currently planned to launch in spring 2022, and it will be the successor policy to the domestic renewable heat incentive, and will continue to support the deployment of low carbon heat, namely air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, and biomass boilers. It will apply to homes and small non-domestic properties in England and Wales. Scotland is doing their own scheme, so the Scottish Government will be able to provide further details if you are operating in that space, but and we will have an installation capacity of up to 45 kilowatts per hour. The BEIS will provide financial support for the installation of air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, and limited circumstances biomass boilers. So biomass boilers will only be supported in rural locations and in properties that are not connected to the gas grid. And as Laura says, that basically tallies with the principle that bioenergy, biofuels will have a role to play, but a niche role where air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps aren't suitable. A grant payment will be offered to help customers overcome the high upfront capital cost of low carbon heat technologies and transition away from fossil fuel systems. And this is different to the current domestic renewable heat incentive, which offers a tariff payment over the course of 7 years. So this is acting on the recommendations of various different bodies such as the CCC and some key recommendations that we got through our evaluation of the RHI, and that an upfront grant will make the scheme more accessible to a wider range of participants. So the BEIS will provide upfront grants of £5,000 towards the installation capital cost of air source heat pumps and biomass boilers, and grants of £6,000 for ground source heat pumps. The scheme has a budget of £450 million, which will be over the course of 3 years. So essentially, it will be split into 150 million per year. It's currently due to launch in April, following the closure of the domestic RHI, and more information will be coming out from Ofgem, the scheme administrator, between now and then in terms of the specifics for how the scheme will work. So just generally, in terms of how we envisage the scheme to operate. The application process for BEIS will be installer-led, with necessary approval sought for the consumer as part of the application process. So it's a two-part voucher application process. Applying to receive a voucher before the installation occurs, and then redeeming the voucher once the installation has taken place. We will be requiring a relatively small amount of upfront information at the first voucher stage, and we are trying to streamline this and make it as simple as possible. So as I said, further detail will be coming out from Ofgem on the specifics of that in due course. All installers participating in the scheme must be MCS certified and members of a consumer code that ensures customers are protected by a Trading Standards Institute approved code of practice. And evidence of MCS certification will be required at voucher application, and MCS certificates will be submitted by the installer when a voucher is redeemed to ensure the installation is compliant with scheme requirements. So basically operating in a very similar way to what the RHI currently does at the moment. Unlike the Green Homes Grant Scheme, there won't be a requirement for MCS installers to be Trustmark registered because the scheme does not cover energy efficiency. The addition of Trustmark doesn't actually add any additional benefit in this case. Installations that have previously received funding under the Renewable Heat Incentive, or the Green Homes Grant, the Home Upgrade Grant, or any other government subsidy for low carbon heat will not be eligible for BEIS for obvious reasons. Now, that's notwithstanding if someone has installed solar thermal, for example, on one of those previous schemes, and they want to install a heat pump, that will be eligible, but people won't receive a grant for the same technology as what has previously been installed. I don't have much more to say at this point, but very happy to take any questions at the end if that is helpful. And as I say, I have a couple of slides just setting that out in a more succinct form that I'm very happy to share following today's session.
Thank Thank you. It's very useful knowing a lot more about BEIS. Someone has just asked, I think you mentioned it, but it sounds kind of cut out. Will BUS require PAS 2035?
No, it won't. So there are energy efficiency. So there are energy efficiency requirements as part of the scheme. So we do expect people to have loft and cavity wall installation prior to the installation of a heat pump. But we are not going so far as to mandate PAS 2035.
Thank you. I don't know who's up next. Suzanne, if you can give me a hint.
If I can get myself off mute, sorry about that. So up next, we have James Carey from Hula, from Hug and Lad.
Thank you.
Hi there. Yeah, the connectivity issues seem endemic, so apologies for that. I was just signing out and back in again, but hopefully you can hear me now. I'll attempt to share some slides, but if I do break up as per previous speakers, do let me know, and I'll revert just to walking you through. But I'm aware that many of your members will be working on LAD schemes or have worked with local authorities on their bids, so won't go over too much old ground, but just wanted to quickly walk you through some of the high level details of some of the home upgrade grant and what we've got planned next. So just quickly on strategic intent, so similar to what Rebecca was just outlining, the home upgrade grant is specifically focused around homes living off the gas grid, where we have some strategic win-wins around the need to tackle fuel poverty and where we plan to decarbonise heating first. So when we specifically look at EF and G rated homes in England, over 50% of homes that are rated EF or G are off the gas grid. So they are disproportionately a focus of our short-term fuel poverty targets to improve homes to at least an EPC rating of band D by 2025. And by tackling those worst levels of fuel poverty, the aims behind HUG are to invest in energy efficiency measures alongside low carbon heat, so that we can have that win-win of taking homes out of fuel poverty whilst decarbonising their heating source, and having that co-benefit of helping contribute to the medium-term aim of increasing the deployment of low-carbon heat as we build up to 600,000 by 2028. So that's kind of the key aim, focus on the least energy-efficient homes occupied by those living on low incomes, and make progress towards our clean heat ambitions. So far on the HUG, we've created an opportunity this summer for local authorities to bid into the Sustainable Warmth competition. So this brought together two funding streams. So a third phase of LAD funding, so 200 million was available through a third phase of LAD, and the first phase of the home upgrade grant, where we made 150 million available. We tried to make that slightly more straightforward for local authorities by having a single set of scheme guidance and a competition where they could submit bids for homes off the gas grid and on the gas grid. And we set out some key scheme design criteria that I've got here on this slide. So to reiterate, that's using the same low income criteria as we had under previous LAD schemes. So this is around households living in income deciles 1 to 5. So median household incomes 29,900. So we set an income proxy of £30,000, and local authorities were asked to submit criteria such as the use of means tested benefits, as is often the case in their eco schemes, to identify and verify those low income households. From a measures perspective, at any measure that's compatible with the standard assessment procedure to be within scope, and that's with the exception of fossil fuel based heating, as one of the explicit objectives is to phase out fossil fuels with a focus off the gas grid. But any other measures were acceptable under the scheme, and they were assessed on strategic fit when we received proposals from local authorities. So we want the schemes to take a fabric first approach and ensure we get all of the essential insulation in place, and then where additional measures can be funded within cost caps, then we'd like to see low carbon heating, and then any glazing or PV that might be affordable within cost caps following those upgrades. And then looking at tenure, so the primary focus is on low income owner occupiers and those in the private rented sector that are living on those low incomes. But we did want to be pragmatic that there are areas of flat blocks or rows of terraces where you have mixed tenure, so up to 10% of a project can be used for social housing, just so you've got that practical area-based delivery. And finally, just turning to cost expectations. So compared to the LAD schemes and some of the previous fuel poverty schemes, there's a reasonable amount of subsidy that is available. The cost expectations were set based upon the estimated costs of improving homes up towards an EPCC. So up to £25,000 is available for your off-grid fossil fuel heated F&G rated homes, whereas the costs of improving a D-rated electric home were more modest at £10,000. And we asked local authorities to outline the recommended mix of measures that they would be seeking to upgrade those homes. And finally, just on the scheme design, landlords that were engaging in the scheme were asked to contribute a minimum of 33% of the total cost of upgrades to ensure they're making an investment in their asset before planned regulations come later in the decade. There's a bit of an incentive before that regulatory stick to come later. So that's HUG 1. We've made grant offers to local authorities, and yeah, we're in the process of entering into MOUs with successful local authorities at the moment. And final slide, just looking at the spending review and the heat building strategy as outlined at the start of this presentation. So that confirmed an additional 950 million for HUG. So that brings, alongside HUG 1, the total investment from 2022 out to 2025 to 1.1 billion. And as I mentioned, we're currently just agreeing those MOUs with local authorities so that they can start identifying households and delivering support from early next year. And then whilst we're doing that, we're designing and seeking approvals for the 950 million that will be set out over the next 3 years.
Thank you very much, James. Sorry, Gary's.
Being somebody who doesn't actually work in the industry, just a very, very quick question for James. It might be a bit of a silly one. What's an MOU?
Sorry, lots of acronyms in this space. That's a memorandum of understanding. So alongside our grant, the local authority will enter an MOU, which will be that memorandum of understanding with the Secretary of State that is effectively like a contract between BEIS and the local authority.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, James. So moving on, looks like Chris is volunteering to speak next. So over to you, Chris.
Yes. Thanks. Thank you very much, Kenneth. Yeah, so I'm the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. This was the 2019 Conservative Manifesto pledged £3.8 billion over 10 years for the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. And this is to bring socially rented homes up to an EPC of C or higher by improving their energy efficiency. So this fund, the SHDF, I'll call it for short, the scheme aims to upgrade a significant number of the social housing stock so that it's more energy efficient, warmer and with lower bills through using measures such as insulation and more efficient heating systems. It started off last year in 2020 with the SHDF demonstrator project, and that awarded £61 million of funding to social landlords across England and Scotland to test innovative approaches in this pilot to retrofitting at scale, and it's seeing over 2,100 social homes being improved to at least EPC Band C and supporting around 1,200 local jobs. And it's also providing an opportunity to learn lessons about high complexity whole house retrofits, of whole house retrofits that we see in these projects. Following that, we're now at the stage of the first wave of SHDF, Wave 1. This is, and for this current wave, it's available for local authorities to bid into and for any social housing provider to upgrade their stock. It's looking to retrofit even more properties than a demonstrator. We've taken a worst first, fabric first, least regrets approach. So you heard from James just then about Hug, and it's very similar. On the kind of worst first, the worst performing homes get the scaled funding. So those with the lower EPC can attract more funding. Fabric first is adopted to ensure heat loss prevention measures are installed before other energy efficiency measures. And the retrofit approach is for lowest regrets. So, i.e., it should minimize the potential of measures installed having to be replaced in the future on their journey to net zero. So that wave 1 is currently in bid assessments and approvals phase. It started a few months behind the Hug competition, which we staggered, and we'll be announcing recipients in due course. All funded projects will be they'll be on the .gov.uk website, and installers are invited to reach out to successful registered providers of social housing to see what opportunities exist. So those of you on the call that are suppliers may already be part of the supply chain of these social housing landlords and local authorities that are making use of the scheme. And we very much welcome new suppliers to the fold too, either as part of the demonstrator or current wave 1 or future wave. So in reference to the future, you heard earlier about the heat and building strategy earlier on in the session, and a number of you will have seen this reference to in the Chancellor's most recent spending review announcements. But similar to the Hug, our share of the future funding is £800 million for SHDF Wave 2, which is going to come next after this Wave 1. That'll be open from next financial year onwards, and this is another significant scaling up, ramping up of funding available. So overall, that brings the total committed funding for the SHDF and associated demonstrator pilot to just over £1 billion. And that's quite a big investment, and it will support the decarbonisation agenda across this important sector on the pathway to net zero. That's the end of my section.
Thank you very much, Chris. I don't know who's up next.
So we have Andre on. Andre.
Oh, I think we've lost your sound there, Suzanne. But it looks like it's Andre Miller up next.
So, yeah, a few of us have been having issues with connectivity, whether we're in the office or at home. So, if can you hear me?
It's dropping in and out a little bit, but yes, we can hear you.
However, we can no longer see you.
We can no longer see or hear you.
Hello?
We can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
I don't know if anyone else can hear Andre, but I can't hear anything.
Andre's now left and is coming back on, as he said in the chat. So he's going to reboot.
What I will do then is, while we're waiting for Andre to come back on, I will ask one. Oh, Andre looks as if he's back.
Hello, sorry, I don't know what's going on today. We seem to all be having BEIS staff seem to all be having issues. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Great. So I haven't actually got any slides, but probably wouldn't be able to share them anyway. So I'll just give you a quick run through of the energy company obligation. So we consulted on that over the summer. The consultation closed on the 1st of September. And in terms of next steps, we'll be publishing the government response in the new year, obviously aiming to have the regulations laid ahead of the current scheme ECO3 ending on the 31st of March. Just to say, recognizing that things are later than we would like, we are thinking about how to mitigate that to try and prevent any hiatus in delivery from the 1st of April. Because even if we do lay the regulations, I mean, even if we lay them, ahead of the scheme starting, we appreciate that Ofgem needs to publish quite a lot of guidance, and obviously people need to familiarise themselves with that guidance, and energy suppliers will need to adapt their systems as well. So one of the things we're thinking about is being able to continue largely under ECO3 rules for a period of time before the new ECO4 rules kick in. So we may have, for example, a 3-month period during which, subject to a few exceptions, such as fossil fuel boilers, it would be possible to deliver under ECO3 rules. But just to highlight that none of this has been signed off by ministers yet, so this is sort of official level thinking. But I can give you a quick rundown of what was in the consultation over the summer and some of the emerging thinking, or at least some of the dilemmas and views expressed in the responses to that consultation. So first of all, obviously, big thing is the increase in the overall value of the scheme to 1 billion, and that is in 2021 prices. So the overall value will be going up. But obviously, we set that target at the start based on what we expect to be delivered over that 4-year period. A big change, I think, overall in terms of objectives, and going back to where the presentations today started on the heat and building strategy, very much a continued focus on low income, but also trying to have a fabric first approach, trying to have a whole house approach as much as possible. And therefore we're bringing in a minimum requirement so that there will be a level of EPC improvement required, very much how the anticipation of HUG as well, so that homes rated F and G will have to get to at least D, and homes rated D and E will have to get to at least a C, and no support for more efficient homes than a D. We're also consulted on an EFG minimum, so a certain proportion of the overall targets for suppliers would have to be met through treating E, F and G home, and that is very much in line with the fuel poverty strategy, or one of the principles within that strategy of treating the worst homes first. Again, something that James talked about earlier. So we expect eco to much more focus on gas homes, albeit there will no doubt be some off gas homes treated, and we're not restricting it to just on gas homes. There will be a change to the scoring methodology, so appreciate that will cause, I suppose, inevitably some pause for thought and some change in processes for people. The reason for that change, or the reasons for that change, is, I suppose, multiple. One of the things we want to achieve is to make it viable to treat, or more viable to treat, smaller homes, and remove the very obvious incentive for people to seek out larger homes that has traditionally existed under eco. So that requires adjustments to the scoring system and frankly skewing it in certain directions so that more terrace homes, at least in terms of our estimates, will be treated. We're also wanting to expand local authority flexibility. So at the moment it's restricted to around 25% of a supplier's target, whereas we want it to be increased to 50%, but also bring in more changes alongside. So some tightening of the rules, because we have found that certain local authorities have strayed quite a long way beyond what our original intent was. So there'll be some tighter rules, but equally a greater opportunity for local authorities to take part, and actually some greater incentives for people to identify better fuel poverty targeting within the LA Flex route. And also suppliers will be able to help identify, as part of the LA Flex route, with sort of renaming it LA and supplier flexibility, suppliers will also be able to identify certain households, for example, through data they have on continued debt. In terms of eligibility, the main, or rather the other 50% that isn't LA Flex, will continue to focus on benefits, but with the restriction that it's only means tested benefits. So what that means in practice is that we are removing any benefits that were eligible under Eco 3 that are not means tested, primarily personal independence payment and disability living allowance. It will be open to all tenures. However, that won't be entirely consistent. So, for example, there will be some restrictions around social housing and PRS. Given both on social housing, it's continuing in very similar vein to Eco 3, taking into account both the greater funding going towards social housing now and the fact that it's, as a tenure, is in much better condition on average in terms of energy efficiency ratings and private rented sector regulations, given where we expect to be heading on the minimum energy efficiency standards there. So basically, less support for social housing PRS than for owner occupiers, which is the biggest tenure, both by volume and in terms of the challenge of changing all those or upgrading all those homes. Boilers, so inevitably some changes, and this is where there's sort of quite a large dilemma, and where inevitably there's a slight conflict between decarbonisation and fuel poverty, in as much as we want to continue to help people who won't be able to afford to replace their boilers, but equally recognising that we have got to sort of start a shift to moving to other heating systems. So primarily, I mean, there will be replacement of boilers that will continue to be allowed, but only where those boilers are inefficient. For efficient boilers, in largely newer boilers, we're going to be creating more incentives for those to be repaired, because what we have seen under ECO is a lot of boilers installed under ECO and then a new ECO boiler going in within a few years, which we want to, well, not just discourage, but basically ban. We're continuing with innovation, and we actually want to give that a greater impetus through the a higher uplift than we have now. So there would be 2 levels of uplift. And we're also sort of tentatively stepping into supporting what we call pay for performance. So we want to add more encouragement for people to measure the performance of energy efficiency measures in situ. And I think that something that, again, Laura mentioned earlier was talked about in the heat and building strategy in the context mainly of non-domestic homes, non-domestic buildings rather. We want to, as I say, take sort of first real steps under ECO. We have tried it under ECO 3, but it wasn't tried out for understandable reasons. But as I say, we want to revamp that, so more people, or rather, there are incentives, greater incentives to do it. And also, there's been a project within BEIS working with several external parties to develop relatively cheap methodologies and technologies to be able to do that. And that is reaching its conclusion. It's called the SMETAS project. And that is what we'll be hopefully able to rely on to have cost-effective and reliable solutions to measure performance. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say in terms of the scheme and next steps. I mean, in terms of overall response, most of the proposals, of which I concede there were a lot, we had 99 questions in the consultation, most were supported by the majority of respondents. We will, however, be making some changes in areas where either people opposed it, or because, for example, our evidence base has shifted, so that has changed our expectations for some of the measures. So, for example, materials costs have significantly increased. Past 35 has increased costs, and there are particular issues around EWI, for example. We are.
I'm afraid, Andre, you're breaking up quite badly now.
Working with industry to resolve, but there's an inevitable higher cost of doing certain.
I think that's yeah. I think the sound there, Andre, is completely gone. So I think you wrapped up there, and you got to pretty much the end of what he was wanting to say. But I don't know. Is there anyone else from BEIS coming on next? Or is that everyone, Suzanne? Can't hear Suzanne either.
I think Suzanne might have left, but yeah, that's all the BEIS speakers. So
I thought
go into some questions.
Thank you, James. I thought that was everyone. I just had to check. Thank you, everyone. You really have provided some very useful information there, so thank you. I think we can move on to some of the questions. If anyone has any questions, if they can put them in the chat, or as Marion has just done, raise your hand through the raise the hand function on the, I think it's available to most people in the chat room. So Marion Dawson has a question, and I'll come straight to you.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yes.
Great, thanks. Yeah, my question's for Will Burton on the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. I'm from a social housing cooperative. We have 80 homes and we're run by our tenants and by people like myself who are on the waiting list. 58 of them are category D. And we know that some of our tenants want to have more energy efficient homes. We missed the wave 1 deadline. You said that wave 2 will be open from the next financial year. Does that mean from April next year?
Hiya, thank you,
Hi.
Marion. Yeah, so wave 2, the money sort of arrives from the Treasury at some point in that financial year, but it'll kick off in the latter half of the financial year. It won't be in the start. So what we'll be doing is sort of a round of engagement with social housing landlords at the start of the year to start warming people up and engaging on the rules and consulting people on any changes that need to happen for wave 2 over wave.
Okay, so when roughly do you think we'd be able to actually apply for that?
I can't say right now because we're yet to sort of finalise the amounts of money and the number of bidders that we're approving on wave 1, but we'll be in a position in January to set out the timeline for consultation and for the key dates for people to be aware of for the wave 2. But we're sort of conscious that people want as much time as possible.
I didn't catch that, Chris. I don't know if you could just I didn't quite catch that, Chris. Do you think you could repeat that? Your sound broke out in the middle of that. Oh, Chris is going to try cycling back round. Hopefully, Marion, you got some answer to your question.
Yeah, I got something from that. Can I also ask other people here if there's any other things that we could apply to that we would be eligible for? Would we be able to apply to access the eco scheme, for example?
I think that's the case. Does anyone else have anything they can add about which measures that a social housing association can apply for?
Yeah, and I've sent Marion my number to give me a call.
Right, thanks, Ian.
Sorry, the audio cut out for a second. What's the question? What type of measures can the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund?
We lost you about halfway through.
Sorry about that.
And then Marion had a follow-up question, which was basically what other than Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, what other funds would she be eligible to apply for?
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite. I mean, there are the people from the other funds are here on the line, so they'll be able to sort of talk through specifically, but if you've got a sort of particular thing that you want sort of funded, if you give us some details or talk to us offline, we can have a discussion about which things are available where.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we probably just want to do whatever seems the most kind of cost effective and efficient to start with, which I think might be insulation, just from what I've been hearing today, and what is the first suggestion on the EPCs as well. But none of us are, you know, we're not experts, so I'm just
yeah. So with the kind of social housing fund, we'll tend to be getting people to do sets of houses and to take a whole house approach to look at what are the necessary measures. I'll probably be speaking out of turn, but I think our people in the eco scheme side are slightly more on the individual measures. So there's a sort of slight difference between, although it's not light and day, and I'll probably get slapped on the wrist for describing it like that. But the package of measures will be, for our scheme, it's what does it take to get you up to EPCC. That's the primary aim.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So the decarbonisation fund is looking at whole houses and what would be needed to bring them up to C. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we might well go for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Marion. Hopefully that's answered your questions. I'm just aware of time, so I'm going to just move on, if I may. Dean Owen has a question.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. I think this is more aimed towards Eco4, and perhaps Andre can just expand a little bit on some of the comments you made in regarding to pay for performance. Now, pay for performance, from what I understand, can be quite a timely process where heat flux sensors and other methodologies of testing may last for, you know, quite a long period of time, you know, over perhaps a year. You mentioned a different methodology. Was it SMETAS? So I just wondered if you can expand on that pay for performance and how that may look upon the launch of Eco4, please.
Yeah, so it's a SMETAS, so it's smart meter enabled measurement, really, and it's been going, the project has been going on for several years, and it's a mixture of several technologies, and ranging from at the one end, really an algorithm alongside smart meter data, to the other end of the scale, looking at much more in terms of actual measurement, so using various sensors in and outside the building. So and that whole scale, I think it was 7 different products have been tested with results compared. So effectively, it's looking at how accurate are the different methods to approximate to a heat transfer coefficient, and how expensive they are, and how easy is it to then maybe convert that heat transfer coefficient to a SAP rating. So we're wrestling with all of those things, but we will be issuing guidance on that. So alongside the government response, obviously we'll also set the basic parameters out in regulation, but we will be also issuing detailed guidance on exactly how that will work. But the general gist is that we would up to, obviously, a reasonable amount, want to compensate people for the costs of the measurement, and then there would also be an incentive if, following the measurement, the measure or measures were shown to be overperforming.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. I think James Kerry's very kindly sent a link on the chat, so no, appreciate your answer on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Andre. Thank you, James, as well, for sorting that link out. Next, we have, I've got a question here from Anne Barradine for Insulated Homes. Several councils and agencies who have mixed of housing have found they've been turned down for HUGs for the off-grid properties, but they have received LADS 3 for the on-gas grid properties. Is there any explanation for this in general? And why is it a straight no for HUGs without any detailed explanation as to why they're rejected?
So yeah, I can take that one, Kenneth. So as I outlined in the presentation, the first phase of HUG was launched alongside the third phase of LAD. Both of those competitions were oversubscribed by local authorities, so we had potentially eligible proposals put forward that weren't able to be funded, and because the HUG 1 pot was smaller at 150 million compared to the LAD pot, there were many local authorities that had applied to both LAD and HUG but only had their LAD project funded. So all local authorities should by now have received a response from BEIS on their proposal to get the information about whether they'll be entering into grant offers with us as a success, or providing feedback to the local authority on the reasons why their project didn't go forwards, and some feedback with a view to those projects potentially being funded as part of future waves. Just for information, in case that hasn't been shared, typically where projects scored less favourably than those that were taken forwards was on the ability to meet both of HUG's objectives. So lots of local authorities have got good experience of delivering LAD projects and focused on energy efficiency, and it's about using the more generous cost caps to aim to do energy efficiency alongside low carbon heating, and the proportion of low carbon heating or inclusion of it was often a key barrier to some local authorities meeting the funding bar for HUG. But yeah, certainly our intent is to work in collaboration with local authorities that didn't receive HUG funding to provide some feedback, and we'll be running some webinars in advance of future phases to try and help them get over the line to improve the geographical reach of the scheme in future phases.
Great, thank you, James. I don't know if Anne, if you're on the call, if you want to, if that answers your question. I don't think Anne's there anymore, but we will make sure that answer certainly gets back to her. I have, yeah, Gary, you're up next, I think. You have a question?
Right, okay. I've got two that won't interfere, hopefully, with my sum up. Across all of the schemes, is there funding available for extract and refill where it is evidence-based on poor installs in the past? That's the first question. An extract and refill is obviously on cavities and things like that. So
there isn't a specific provision in under Eco to fund extract. So what we've talked about is a hard to treat uplift, which I think we'll rename, and there's in the consultation, and there's a there's a question about whether that should include extraction. I mean, you can, even currently, it's possible to refill properties assuming that there's a surveyor's report which shows that that it should be extracted and refilled to basically prevent fraud. But yeah, there isn't a sort of a specific score under eco to fund extraction.
Thank you, Andre. And your
Right.
second question?
The second question was, I spotted in the presentations the wonderfully named growing the workforce. Boots on the ground, we've got a millipede at the moment with 3 legs. And therefore we desperately need to work out how we grow the workforce, skill the workforce, keep the workforce. What funding will be available to enable the industry to grow? Because the amount of schemes that are coming out is fantastic. My concern is there simply is not enough people to do the work. And if these schemes are coming out as early as the spring, where on earth are we going to get these people from? So where is the funding coming from? I'm very, very happy to put together a national funding program, which I've already been talking to varying people about, but it needs funding, and it needs to be done quickly. That's my second question.
Elliot, do you look as if you want to come in on that? Nope, we're not hearing you, Elliot. I think you've got
can you hear me now?
Oh, that's it. Got you now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. Thanks for that question, Gary. I'd say that yeah, we are aware of this challenge that we've got, and I think there's a role that needs to be played by both government and industry in this. Just to say, recently we did commit £6.9 million worth of funding to deliver almost 8,000 training opportunities through our skills training competition, and that's gone really well, and we're in the process of evaluating this to try and get any key lessons learned so that we can take the best aspects of this and look at incorporating this into any future training that we do. Outside of the role of central government as well, local authorities are looking at putting together their own programs of upskilling. So there may be opportunities for you there to go and look and engage with local authorities. And then additionally, there's also the National Skills Fund. So there is significant amounts of funding that are being put into supporting the upskilling in level 3 qualification. So that may be another avenue that you may be interested in having a look at. But I think more generally, as I mentioned, I think we need to try and get the sort of balance right from this. So we want, whilst government does have a role to play as well, it'd be really good for us to discuss if there are any sort of new ways we give and how much new approaches that you, or ideas that you might have from our perspective as well. It'd be really good beneficial for discuss if there are any sort of increasing ways the skill level within new approaches that you, or ideas that could help to increase the number of training beneficial for increasing the skill level within the industry, or ways that could help to increase the number of trained installers. And I'd be more than willing to have
certainly willing to
a conversation about this sort of off the
have
line
a call
or separately away from this, because we're really interested.
We've been working with varying people doing MVQ level. Certainly willing to MVQ level 2 for building treatment and insulation. I think we've got 80 people. We've been working with varying people doing MVQ. One side of it that desperately needs some help, level 2, one would suggest, for building treatment and insulation, assessor 80 people side of things, because I think the only provider fully funded one side of it that desperately needs some help, one would suggest, is the retrofit coordinator, whole UK side of things, because there is a desperate shortage fully funded of area that I've seen retrofit coordinators. We've got to look at the whole UK working together. There is a coming up with a complete package of. We seem to be doing all these measures on the whole house approach. I think we've got to look at the industry working together on a whole industry coming up with a complete package. We seem to be doing all these measures on the whole house approach. I think we've got to look at the industry. So would welcome on a whole industry approach a conversation and try and find a complete training package, what can be done to help. So we can move on mass, do other things quite swiftly. So very good answer. Would welcome like the a conversation, chance to have a chat, see what can be done to help. But so thank you, Elliot. Do other things in my very good answer. Like the chance to have a
I'm
chat.
aware of
that
time
is great.
So thank you, Elliot. On. So we'll try and squeeze a couple more questions in. I have a lot of questions here. I'm aware of time. I haven't a question from his office. I'm not quite sure. So we'll try and squeeze a couple more questions in. I have a lot of questions here. You've got there's a hand raised there from office. I'm not quite sure who office is. Been waiting for a while. You've got there's a hand raised there. I don't. Been waiting for a while. No, we're not. You're muted, so obviously we're not hearing anything. I'll move on and I'll come back. No, Andre Tartza, you have a question. You're muted, so obviously we're not hearing anything.
Hi,
I'll move on and
yes,
I'll
hi
come
everyone.
back.
Say thank
Andre
you to
Tartza,
Gary
you have
and
a question.
Kenneth for organizing this call, continuing to support the industry. And thanks to Laura, thank you to Rebecca, Gary and Kenneth for organizing for this call, continuing us and to support the industry. And thanks to Laura, I was looking forward to this just to hear what's coming for joining us and giving us an overview. I like to be positive. I was looking forward to this always just to hear what's coming cases and all that. Today I must admit I'm underwhelmed. I like to be positive in some points. Always, and in most cases I succeed. And probably I wasn't the only one. I must admit at some points I drifted in the at some points in the areas of science fiction. I even thought about Star Trek, and probably I wasn't the only one. Hearing that heat pumps, at some points I drifted in the can work without the areas of science fiction. I even thought about Star Trek, hydrogen. Hearing like a wishful list thinking can work. To my mind, what came listening to some of the presentations hydrogen, that seems to me like a wishful what I was talking about. It's to my mind what came to listening to some of the presentations by 2030. Guys, people, what everyone talking about is still happening. 2022 will talk about transforming the world by 2034 until we figure it out. People and everyone keeps saying it's still happening. Very encouraged. We'll apply the same rules as for eco-friendly to hear we figure it out. Question about the workforce because it seems very encouraged. People and make policy or think about local authorities, big contractors. Because it seems the little things very high level of the work. People in make policy and think about local authorities. Not how you create big contractors or work. The little people how you do the work. Stop decimating the workforce that you have. And at the moment, it's not how you create green home grants. Fantastic workforce scheme is how you it took ages making the workforce. Great infrastructure at the moment. What's happening with that? Green home grants going fantastic today scheme. We're talking about taxpayers, money, and great infrastructure. What's happening with that? Good is regards to wasting money as of today. All that expenditure gets about taxpayers. Why is money and not reused? And being a bit good is regards to not wasting money. Keep going on. All that expenditure gets wasted. I don't know if really not reused, but I do expect it to see and just improve the scheme and keep going. Boots on the ground, and I expect to see. I don't know if really I expect an answer, but I do expect to see. Thank you very much. And I do try to be boots on the ground, and I expect to see the best details that work, not just announcements.
Thank you, Andre. I don't know if anyone from BEIS wants to come back.
I think that's just
on that.
The best I could do today. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. I don't know if anyone from BEIS wants to come back on that. No. Doesn't sound like it.
I've got another one then.
Okay.
Just really curious, how is LUD 2 going?
No, doesn't sound
when are we
like
going to get work on there? I've got another one then.
Okay.
Just really curious.
Okay. Thank you.
LUD
Anyone
2 going?
from BEIS want to come in on either of those points from Andre?
LUD 2.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone from BEIS want to come in on either of those points from Andre?
Hi, Will Humphrey from BEIS. I think I'll just come in on the first point, and thanks, Andre, for your contribution. Just to say, I think, yeah, they're very valid points. I think I'll just come in on the first point. Thanks, Andre, that we need to move from your contribution out. Just to say, I think, yeah, they're all very valid points to delivery very quickly. We are absolutely more than anyone that we need skills based, but it means engaging setting out wider high ambition, a range of people delivering that and moving to delivery very quickly. And that means deliver this stuff. So skills based, but it means engaging with a much wider. This is sort of range. This is obviously just a start, and we do need to really living ourselves on change contract and deliver this stuff over the next decade. But that's going to have to involve a lot of this is sort of work with a lot of obviously just a start, and we're really keen to deliver transformational change contract and net zero over this to make that next decade. But that's going to have to involve a lot of just to work with a lot of we know it's very ambitious and there are a lot of challenges. And more calls like this, more engagement like this to make that happen. So get ourselves in the right position to move forward. And that includes learning from. We know it's very high ambition and there are a lot of challenges, and that's why we're sort of starting to undertake this engagement. James going to come in on that too. Get ourselves in the right position to move forward, and that includes learning from issues and challenges under previous schemes.
Gary, you wanted to jump in there?
If James going to come in on that too.
On the LAD 2 question.
Thank you very much, Will.
I think the simple answer to that is depends what part
Gary,
of the country you're in.
To jump in there
because I've had reports on the LAD 2 question on LAD 2 from I think the simple people running the schemes depends what part of the country you're in. Getting involved with the schemes. I've had reports back. And the different mechanisms that are being used across the 5 area hubs, people running the schemes, I think people we're definitely seeing involved with the schemes that some of them are working. And the different mechanisms that are being used across the 5 area hubs, the Southwest is smashing it. I think we're definitely seeing they're doing very well. That some of them are working and I suggest that the Midlands and the Northwest, the Southwest is smashing it, of which we've been on varying calls. They're doing very well. Their act together, and I suggest that the Midlands and the Northwest, I still need to find out a bit more about what's going on in the Greater South East together and the North East and Yorkshire areas. I still need to find out a bit more about what's going on in the Greater South East and the schemes in the North East and Yorkshire areas. They seem to be going very well. It will be very interesting to hear maybe off this call from people who are involved with LAD and what their experiences are. So it will be very interesting to hear and try and off this call things along from people who are involved with LAD. When does LAD 3 and what their experiences are, so we can feed effectively back to kick off because I believe that LAD and try and move things along to the end of March. When does LAD 3 effectively kick off? Because I believe that LAD 2 has been extended to the end of March.
Does it? James, you want to say something?
Yeah. Thanks, Gary. Yeah, really insightful.
James, you want to say something?
Cool reflections. So, can you? Yeah, you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you.
Thanks, Gary.
Breaking up a little bit,
really insightful.
Keep going.
Just a bit, Norman. So, can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you. You're breaking up a little bit.
So.
Keep going.
Just so a bit, Norman. On LAD, so just a couple of points to reflect from the recent comments. So from Andre's outline, one of the actions on LAD, so just a couple of the closure points to reflect from the recent comments. So from some of them, Andre's outline, a third phase of LAD. One of the actions that the funding that closure made available to the authority utilised last summer alongside a third phase of HUG. And so the funding that's going through grant offers made at the moment, and those local authorities alongside that grant funding phase of HUG to be able to start delivering. That's going through grant offers at the moment, next calendar year. Those local authorities LAD 3 will commences in early 22 to be able to start lessons from phase 3. Earlier phases of LAD have shown that you need to do quite a lot of kind of identification of commences in early 22. Homes, I guess lessons from and earlier phases of LAD have shown delivering you need to do quite a lot of kind of identification of the wall and potentially first up solid wall installations, signing them up, and it'll be relevant to many of these delivering the upgrades. Typically during the kind of mindful of that overlap solid wall installation. The second phase of LAD that's still ongoing, and agree that so we're kind of mindful behind that overlap between LAD phase 1 versus LAD phase 2 is LAD phase 1 ongoing allocation, agree that in a competition to individual intent behind and then as to avoid LAD phase 1 versus LAD phase 2 is LAD phase 1 with a regional level in a competition to individual empower those regions to create their own to avoid the postcode lottery kind of into allocating funding at the regional level, and then to deliver how those across their regions to create their own models. Some have been able to hit the ground quicker than others, all are doing a really good job at identifying households to deliver across their local authority and boundaries. Others have reflected. Some have been able to hit the ground quicker than others, all are doing a really good job at identifying households into delivery. So we'll be kind of learning from that, reflected. Working with the hubs has been a bit of a mixed experience so far in going forward, and yeah, very happy to set up delivery. So we'll be kind of in touch with learning from that and on LAD, working with the hubs on installers that have been working on going forward, and yeah, very happy to consider those thoughts. Put in touch with colleagues working on LAD and any kind of
thank you very much, James.
That have been
hopefully that's answered your comments, Andre, to some extent.
The next phases of the scheme.
Thank you very much, James. Hopefully that's answered your comments.
I'm very grateful.
Andre,
I'm very
to some
grateful
extent.
for indeed all the attention. I'm really waiting to see action. I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for indeed all the attention that's happening. We are really losing faith. Actions and to see things. That's really where actually moving where we are and things happen. I don't think it's just me. We are really losing faith. Having a bad day or waking up. That's really where today. Where we are and this from all I don't think it's just me. If I look at the maybe having a bad day or the messages coming through to BEIS have a lot of that's not my words. I'm trying to be positive. If I look at the BEIS have a lot of work to do, the messages coming through micro heating installers, a lot of it applies to all my words. I'm trying to engage. BEIS have a lot of work to do to convince Peter micro heating installers. It applies to
that's the next question I was going to go to anyway, Andre.
Totally, so, I couldn't put it better.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Yes, that's the next question I was going to go to anyway. I have your question Andre, right here in front of me. Thank you very much. Yes, I hadn't forgotten you, Peter. I have your question right here in front of me. Peter Tom from Green Heat. Yes, is asking how do BEIS propose to engage with small micro heating installers from Green Heat that make up the majority of heating installers? Asking because trust seems to be. How do BEIS propose to engage with small micro heating installers that make up the majority of heating installers? If anyone because trust seems to be breaking down. To mention that or respond to that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so I can
if anyone wants to.
That. I mean, I'd be interested. Firstly, I think be interesting. Really interested to hear.
Respond to that.
Just in terms of trust breakdown. Yeah, so I can issues are. I mean, I know for that. I mean, I'd be interested. Firstly, I think trying to set up interesting. Really interested to hear task force trust breakdown what electrification. I mean, I know for speaking to heat pump installation, we're trying to set up build a task force and likewise electrification to work with the installed base to understand challenges, training courses and trust build their membership to try and build that relationship. Likewise, working through the heat. But I do, yeah, I think that there's a broad point here which you made with training courses and work with them, long-run uncertainty and creating conditions, build that relationship. The market is going to respond. But I do, yeah, I think that there's a broad point here which you made ourselves. And there's a combination and creating conditions which the market is going to respond in the way that we need it to, and policy achieve to bring that about ourselves. And that's both in terms of, and there's a combination of actions which schemes like the boiler upgrade scheme to grow the market and provide subsidy support for early adopters. And that's both also bringing forward regulations schemes like the boiler upgrade scheme to grow the market and provide travel subsidy support for early adopters. It's also bringing forward implementing critical enabling policies like energy price rebalancing, which gas grid provides earlier in the call, but we need to travel get to a point where it's also making green choices. Implementing critical enabling policies like energy price rebalancing, which I think someone else raised earlier in the call, but we need to get to a growth where consumers aren't disincentivized so they can meet making green choices. That future demand obviously means that we need to work much more with the installer base. It's something we have to do at speed, and it's something which grow the market so they can meet want to do at speed and demand ambitions for. But it has to be there needs to be a consistent and stable something we have to do at speed, and it's something which other sectors where costs are reduced quickly, speed and have ambitions for. But we agree, for example, or even sort of there needs to be a consistent and stable sectors. You need to create those conditions and other sectors where costs are reduced quickly. So we want to be doing more frequent engagement like this. Non-energy sectors, you need to create those conditions and that framework to provide that certainty. But always interested to hear how we can do more, and we'll want to be doing more frequent engagement like this.
Thank you very much, Will.
We've got some initiatives underway to help do that.
Peter, do you want to come
always
back
interested
on
to hear
that?
how we can do more, and obviously hearing about conditions on the ground.
Yeah, if I may.
Thank you very much, Will.
Yeah, I mean, we have been trying
Peter,
to have
do you
a
want to
dialogue
come back
with
on that?
BEIS through our professional bodies, CIPHE, and yeah, if I may. We have said we are here to talk. Yeah, I mean, most of the micro businesses do find the barriers with all the schemes, professional bodies, CIPHE, MCS, and we have said we are here to talk. Quite interesting to see that most of the micro businesses do find the barriers with all the schemes. But most of the industry is made up of small micro. Quite interesting to see that Trustmark's been dropped. We don't have spare people sitting around to fill forms in and play with computers. Most of the industry is made up of small micro. We've got customers to deal with. We don't have spare people. It makes it really, really difficult to fill forms. All the installers I speak to play with computers, and they look at it and think, well, we've got customers to deal with. So it makes it really, really difficult. We fit 6,500 all the installers I speak to. Probably 100. They look at it and think 20 heat pumps maybe have gone in today. The market is going to be really difficult. We fit 6,500 boilers today. That probably 120 heat pumps maybe have gone in today. We're still generating. It's going to be really difficult. Gas, and it's 50% fossil fuels today. That workforce. All the ministers I've asked on this. When we're still generating electricity, decarbonising electricity, 50% fossil fuels. All they say is, well, and all the ministers I've asked, we've got to do it by 2035. When we'll be decarbonising electricity to do that. But all they say is, well, the climate change based on carbon capture. We've got to do it by 2035. The wind doesn't always have aspirations to do that. The solar isn't there certainly during the winter months. It's based on carbon capture. And no one nuclear has ever come to me and the wind doesn't always. Where are we going to get the solar isn't there certainly during the winter months in the dark to fire up all these heat pumps. No one has ever come to me and been able to say. So the industry, I mean, we're not stupid. Where are we going to get our customers aren't security of supply from? So to say to us, I'll go on a 2-day heat pump at your own cost and electric vehicles. So the industry, I mean, we're not stupid people. Our customers aren't. It's not a reality. So to say to us, we'll go on a 2-day course. We actually written a course to do this, as you know, fit heat pumps, which we may never do. We don't know where the hook is. It's not a reality. These guys off the street. We've written 2 days without pay. We actually written a course to low temperature, which they may never. We don't know where the hook is, and that get these guys off the street for 2 days without pay to do a course on low temperature, which they may.
Thank you very much, Peter. I don't know if that's the problem. Anyone, if Laura's still about to talk about the overview, very much, Peter, from an overview policy point of view. Anyone, if Laura's how's that policies talk about translating into changes from gas? How's that policies translating into changes from
sorry, no, sorry, I actually do have to run off in a couple of minutes as well, but just to say, so sorry, this is the point around decarbonisation of the power sector. I actually what our plans are there. So I mean, I think just to say, so there are certainly challenges in decarbonisation of the power sector, and getting to what our plans are there. So I mean, I think there's going to have to be a role for things like carbon capture on gas. There's going to have to be a role for nuclear, and there's going to have to be a role for lots of intermittent renewables and things like energy storage. There's going to have to be a role for things like carbon technology for that. But I think the modelling we've done, we've looked at does indicate that's possible, and it's going to be a big challenge to get to 2035. But I think the modelling that's kind of why we set those targets where we do think it's deliverable. But it is we need to get the policy framework right together. But yeah, I mean I'm happy to put you in touch with colleagues from our power sector teams on that point if needs be. We need to get the policy framework right together. I mean that's what I can really say on that point. But yeah, I mean I'm happy to put you in touch with colleagues from our power sector teams on that point if needs be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean that's what I can really say on that point. I don't know. Sorry.
Okay. Were you wanting to come back in as well, James, or as well? Were you wanting to come back in as well, James, or?
Yeah, nothing to add there. But yeah, if there are any more HUG questions, we've got a couple more minutes or a quarter past. But
yeah, I am aware
nothing to
time-wise.
But yeah, if there are any more
I don't know
questions,
how you're all placed for time. I know we've gone over. I am aware a bit time-wise, but I do still have a lot of questions. If you're all anyone,
Kenneth, I wonder whether maybe we provide some written responses to those, and those can go out to your members. Just conscious about time. Kenneth, I wonder whether maybe we provide some written responses to those, and those can go out to your members.
Thank you there.
Just conscious about
for all your support, because it's very helpful having BEIS just engage with the industry in these sort of your support sessions. I know that our members appreciate it, and while we don't always show it, we sometimes can be quite a grumpy lot, but we do appreciate the fact that you've taken some time out to talk to us today. I think Gary wants to sum but we do appreciate just taking some time out to a close today. I think
thank you, Kenneth, and thank you very much for all of the friends from BEIS who've come on to give us a glimmer into the varying schemes that are going on. Friends from BEIS have come on to let everybody know that we are actually working with BEIS on actually doing a publication for all of the schemes in England, to let everybody know, Scotland and Wales, actually working with BEIS to be produced for the middle of next year, to go out to all the councils and housing associations, Scotland and Wales. But obviously we can talk about that another time. A small challenge to go out to everybody. The association's now gone over 400 members, of which over 100 of those are councils and housing associations. We need to grow over 400 members, that side of the association, because it seems more and more obvious that councils and associations with the social housing side are becoming more and more important. So we offer free membership to councils and housing associations. If anybody would like to introduce us to councils and housing associations, we can get them on board and join the membership. Councils and housing associations. I want to just talk about the training side of things, because quite simply, with growing prices for product, I want to just talk about the training side of things. Growing prices for energy, for growing prices for just purely growing with inflation for energy. Training people prices at a cost is not possible. With inflation, people need to be working all the time just to try and keep their head above water. Cost is not, and therefore it is absolutely essential that all training that is necessary to grow our industry has a 100% funding initiative. That all training, whether that is 70% on the skills training competition, we then look at working with combined authorities to put the 30% on top of that to create 100%, whether we use some ERDF funding to create 100%, but we need to encourage people into our industry. We need to encourage people to get trained, and we need to help our industry deliver the varying schemes that we have. We need to encourage. I've made that one of my missions over the next couple of months. Our industry deliver, although I haven't got much else to do, obviously. We have. I've made that one of my missions over. Overall, I'm disappointed with this extract and refill scenario that there's no money to help these people that are living in very bad conditions. Overall, I'm disappointed with this extract. This needs to be sorted. There's no money. These people are in fuel poverty and are living in dangerously unhealthy conditions. We need to deal with it. We cannot expect the likes of Sega to deal with it. Living in dangerously unhealthy. It needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with quickly. We need to deal with it. Winter's on its way. We cannot expect 40,000 more people because of fuel increases. It needs to be dealt with. I haven't even taken into consideration the overall fuel increases. 40,000 more people are going into fuel poverty. And I haven't even. We've got all these schemes, the overall fuel, and we're not even scratching the surface. 40,000 more people are going into fuel poverty. Something needs to be done. We need to unite. All these schemes, and we need to come together. But we need to be positive. This is why these Zoom calls are very important. To give us the information, and this is why we thank BEIS for coming on and giving us this information. To give us the information, I think we need more of them, and this is why I think we need to unite more, and we need more collaboration. Giving us this information. And as soon as we get time, we will organise some Zoom calls for the regional energy efficiency sectors to start talking together. We will organise some Zoom calls for the that needs to be dealt with. Energy efficiency. You've got 5 different models; they can't all work the same. Start talking together. Why haven't we got one model that works? Hopefully, some lessons will be learned through LAD 1 and LAD 2 on how LAD 3 should be used. One model. There are varying levels of delivery, lessons will be learned, and there are varying levels of non-delivery. LAD 3 should be used. We need to find out what's working, what's not working, and stop wasting time and stop wasting money. There is so much money being wasted right now. We need to use that money to train people up and stop wasting money. That would be a bad idea. There is so much overall being wasted. Really encouraged by the amount of schemes and the amount of effort and the amount of money that's sitting there. A bad idea. I pray overall it gets used correctly. By the amount of schemes and the industry has its massive part to play. Sitting there. Please email me suggestions used correctly, and we can feed back. We work together and do this. It's massive. It's massive opportunity over the next 10 years, and we can feed back. Let's not just tick the box. Let's not just meet the minimum standards required over the next 10 years. Let's just go that little bit further. It's all laid out for us. We now need to talk and get it moving. So I'd like to thank everybody who's come on the call. Let's just go that little bit further. It's all laid out for us. We can crack this. Talk and get it moving. So I'd like to thank if we don't talk before, I'd like to say to everybody, very happy Christmas. We can crack this. We're not far away. If we don't talk, I think we're all going to be busy. I'd like to say to everybody, the last week is to go by. I'm going to be cutting up trees and moving them so I get out of my flaming house. And we haven't had the snow yet down our end, but the wind's been pretty bad. The last week is to go by. I'm going to be been great trees and moving them so working with you all over this year. And we haven't had the snow I'm sure we'll be talking very soon. Thank you so much for all your support. It's been great working with you. And look out for your Christmas card. I'm from Ken and I, because I think we've designed one. But again, thank you very much for your support. And we've got a lot of work to do, but there's some fantastic opportunities out there. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, Gary.
We've got a lot of work to do. But there's some fantastic opportunities out there.
Just echoing what Gary said, thank you very much to Andre, Chris, Laura, Will, Rebecca, James, and Suzanne for corralling everyone in BEIS to take part in this. I know it's it's not been the easiest to corralling everyone, bring around to try and get everyone organised as quickly. But thank you very much, Suzanne. We do appreciate that. It's not been the easiest. And it would be great if we can bring around maybe do a follow-up, not necessarily with presentations, but just a Q&A on some of these follow-up. And it would be great if questions. I think there'll be more coming out of this, maybe in the new year once everyone's back just a Q&A at their desks on some of these follow-up. Thank you everyone for coming in and taking part. If you have any questions that you would like us to pass on to BEIS or any other points you'd like to make, please email me directly or email Gary. Kenneth at Energy Efficiency Association will do the job. Any other points you'd like to make, please email me directly or email Gary. We will endeavour to make sure that BEIS has all that information and all those questions, so they have a chance to answer them. We will we will hopefully see you all on the next call. Have a good Christmas and good New Year. Answer them. Thank you. And we will hopefully see you all on the next call. Have a good
Thanks very much,
Christmas and good New Year.
And ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, boys and ladies.